Broadcasting Company presents Tales of the Foreign Service, a feature in NBC's University of the Air, written and produced in cooperation with the State Department and dedicated to the personnel of the Foreign Service. The material used in this series is based upon the confidential files of the State Department, much of it never before released to the public. Tonight's program is about the life and death of the American legation in Athens, Greece, and its rebirth as the American embassy during the recent war. A story of the human problems involved when a little island of the United States was swallowed up by the onrushing tidal wave of the Nazi power at its zenith, and what it did to the American colony which was caught in the maelstrom.
George Lewis Jones, and I was serving as a Foreign Service officer in the United States Legation at Athens, Greece, at the time the British and Greek armies were swept back by the German Panzer Division. I was in Athens when the German forces took over. It was my duty, serving under Minister Lincoln McVeigh, to help report the situation as I saw it. It's strange now as I read back over the chronology of events that took place. There were plain, brutal facts to deal with. But behind them lay incidents, heartbreaking, moving, and sometimes comic. I'm sentimental about Greece with its tradition of freedom from time immemorial, and I'm impressed, as other Americans are, at the Greek record against the fascists in the past war. You'll remember their heroic success against Mussolini's black shirts until the weight of German power tipped the scales against them. I'll never forget the 6th of April, 1941. I was at the embassy with the American minister and Mrs. McVeigh.
It's a terrible thing to watch a city die, Louis.
It's a tragedy, Mr. Minister. The Greeks put up such a wonderful fight against the Italians, and then the Germans had to come in like this. Now that the Stukas have ruined the harbor, I don't see how the British can hope to get away.
How are the people taking it, Mr. Jones?
Well, under the circumstances, I'd say pretty well, Mrs. McVeigh. There's a kind of a suppressed feeling of panic. The Greek government may be forced to flee Athens at any moment. And what do we do, Mr. Minister?
What do we do, Louis? We'll go on representing the American government and the countries we're protecting, just as long as there's anyone to do business with, and they let us stay. At least, we're not at war yet.
No, we were not at war with the Nazis, but our friends, the Greeks and British, were. The British legation had to move out fast. At the British consulate in Salonika the next day, my colleague, Ed Gullion, from the American consulate, was talking with a New Zealand major, and...
Hello, British Consulate, West here.
Is Ed Gullion with you, Major?
Just a moment, sir. For you, Gullion. It's your boss, I think.
Thanks. Hello?
This is John Johnson, Gullion. I'm out here in the suburbs at the American Farm School.
Yes?
The Greek aerodrome at Sades is being evacuated. There are all kinds of fireworks going off and smoke rising from the hills. Perhaps you'd better tell West.
Johnson says they're evacuating the aerodrome at Sades and that there's much smoke rising back in the hills. Really? May I speak with him? Hello, Mr. Johnson, West again. Is it black smoke?
Yes, very black.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Well, this probably means the end of my commission, but here goes.
Yes, sir?
Take this message immediately. Use your motorbike, Lance Corporal.
Yes, sir.
I've told them to blow up our petrol, 90,000 gallons. It's the loss of our reserves. Maybe the last British act in Salonika, maybe my last act, too.
You've done a good job, Major West.
Well, I've no authority to do it, you know, but can't let Jerry have all that petrol, can I? The next time you see me, you may be calling me Corporal. And on top of it, I'll probably get a bill from the War Office.
Nobody knows to this day whether Major West was demoted or whether he even escaped with his life. Ed Gullion was at the British consulate at the time because it was America's job as a neutral to take over British interests. There were urgent evacuation problems to be met in Salonika, too. And all of this confusion was to give us a foretaste of our own later dilemma. Meanwhile, in Athens, my wife and I had an amusing and somewhat pathetic experience.
Louis, I'm sorry to bother you here at the embassy, but something terrible is happening.
What's the matter, dear? Is the house on fire?
Well, it will be soon. They're fortifying our garden, and are planning to have a big battle out there.
What on earth are you talking about? Who's fortifying our house?
The British.
Are you serious?
Yes.
I thought all of them had been evacuated.
Well, come with me and I'll show you, Louis. You've got to stop them. So there's the officer in charge, Louis.
He's young enough. One-man army, eh? May I ask what you're doing in my garden?
Oh, I'm putting up a roadblock, sir, with this mortar and anti-tank rifle.
At my very gatepost? Don't you know the rest of your people have left?
Now, have they?
Yes.
Oh, I've been separated from my outfit for some time. 3 days ago, I lost my radio car, so I've had no communication. However, I've got my orders to set up a resistance point covering this strategic intersection. And I've got orders to hold it at all costs until 22 hours. I intend to carry it out.
I see. Well, how about coming inside and having a spot or something while we talk this thing over? I'm Jones of the American legation.
Oh, American, eh? I certainly didn't expect to see a friend at this point. I'd like a drink. Thanks.
Have another?
I will if you can spare a little spot for my lads. They've been wizards.
Can do. Meanwhile, here's a nice tall one for you.
I was very thirsty. It's hot out there on the road.
There's one thing. You said this was a strategic point?
Yes. That's what my orders call it. Of course, they're 5 days old.
Well, I've been around here a long time, and there's a much more strategic point about a half a mile up the road.
Oh, is there?
Yes. Now, for what you want to accomplish, this isn't really the best spot. And then a battle here would be kind of a messy business, don't you think? Particularly if my house gets it involved.
Oh?
Our legation is going to be busy looking after your people, you know. You wouldn't want me to sleep in a crater, would you?
Well, no. Where is this other strategic point?
Come on, I'll show you. Just up the road. Half an hour later. Hello?
Hello, Louis. This is Ralph.
Yes?
You've got to do something. There's some crazy bunch of British soldiers here digging up my front yard. They're muttering something about a battle to be fought here.
I know. I just sent the battle up there myself. As a matter of fact, as I'd figured beforehand, there wasn't any battle. The British finally destroyed their trucks and supplies and hid under the olive trees for several days, until the British destroyers and submarines sneaked in under the German guns and carried most of them away to safety. But the departure of the British was to leave their affairs in our hands. Now, under international law, when a country's representatives must withdraw in time of emergency, any remaining neutral representatives become its proxy and protect its interests. Always in coping with British problems left behind in our care, we were vicariously living the future. Then one day the war drew close to our own legation. This incident happened to Ed Gullion at Salonika when he was closing up British business there. As he opened the door to his flat one evening, there was waiting for him a mournful ring of 4 or 5 Jewish refugees, most of whom he had never seen before.
Well, what's this, Joseph?
Please, Mr. Gullion, I thought perhaps you would not mind if I spent the night here. I've been a faithful clerk for 20 years.
I know that, Joseph. Of course, I don't mind you spending the night here, but who are your friends?
They are cousins. What will happen to us? It is more and more difficult to buy food now if you are a Jew. It is hard to find a roof. But we know that as long as America is here, we will be all right.
As long as America was there, we did what we could for special problems such as these. The situation was complicated, however, because there was no Greek government to deal with. The American position was becoming nebulous and uncertain, And to tell the truth, we were about as neutral as rattlesnakes, as we learned in trying to handle the British problems dropped in our laps. In doing this necessary chore of cleaning up British business, we had our first introduction to Dr. Vogel, the representative of the German legation. He was a do-nothing little man, not at all up to his role as a representative of the super race. A fumbling, uncertain, vague personage who continually depended on Berlin for authority to answer questions directly. But he was all we had to deal with, and this we did as best we could, mostly by high-sounding bluff. Why are you breaking down that door? Who's in charge here? Get out, swine! You can't break the seal of the American legation. This is American property now. Who is your commanding officer?
I am in charge here. You wanted to see me? Dr. Vogel, German minister.
I'm the representative of the American legation. My name is Jones. I protest this violation of American protection and the losing of British diplomatic property.
Your British friends have left, Herr Jones. Or didn't you know?
I must inform you that the former British legation is now under the protection of the United States. If you have any familiarity with international law, you should know that. I demand the immediate restoration of this property to my custody and the return of all items removed from this building.
But we must find living quarters for our troops, Herr Jones.
I know what you're doing to private British and Greek houses, but this building is now as much a part of the United States as our own legation.
Back to your quarters. You soldiers there, get back to your quarters. Sofort.
Jawohl, Herr Minister.
Is that satisfactory?
Yes.
You are in the right, Herr Jones, as long as relations are maintained between your government and mine. We can wait.
All of us bluffed our way through. We weren't sure in those days just how far the Germans would dare to go against us. Obviously, they didn't yet want war with America. These were alarming times, though. All means of communication with Washington were severed, and we had only our radios to bring us news. Mail pouches were never delivered, banking facilities were disrupted, and groceries were hard to come by. Meanwhile, all around us was great misery, and the beginning of that hunger which was to take the lives of so many thousands of Greeks during the dark years of occupation. This valiant race, from which had sprung our Western culture and civilization, was being trampled underfoot. The Greeks were our friends, and they had won their victory over the Italians, only to be victimized under the Nazi boot. The day the Germans came in force, the population having been warned off the streets by radio, they entered a deserted city. Troops continued to enter all day long. They soon filled all the hotels and were overflowing unceremoniously into private residences. Disabled Greeks were forcibly ejected from the hospitals to make room for Germans. Places of business were open under orders, and German soldiers were buying and eating everything in sight, paying in occupation marks, which the merchants were obliged to accept. The inflow of German motorized troops went on interminably as German planes, now based at nearby airports, constantly filled the air over the capital. But added to that eerie sound was another. Young boys in the street were throwing up to their Italian conquerors the defiant challenge of the Greek war cry, Aera. The word means win, and was Greek slang for pushover. They were not conquered. They admitted no defeat. Their integrity was intact. One thing I remember particularly, because it shows Greek sentiment for the United States, which never dimmed. I was at home with my wife when she called me to the window late one afternoon.
Louis, come here to the window.
What is it?
It's Nicholas, our fishman. Why, he hasn't been here since the Germans came.
The box he's carrying.
Oh, Louis, it looks like a little coffin.
His child.
He must have died. It's bringing her to us.
Poor devil.
Hasn't had enough money to pay for a decent burial, that's it. So he wants us to help. Oh, Louis.
Every day a new cry for help for these children that are dying from starvation.
I'll let him in. Please come in, Nicholas. Oh, I'm so sorry.
You've been so kind to us, Nicholas. Is there anything we can do?
Why you cry, Mrs. Jones?
Huh?
What?
Look, help me with the coffin lid, Mr. Jones.
But, Nicholas...
Oh, all okay. I have brought you something. Do not look so sad. Help me.
Oh.
See?
3 beautiful fat lobsters.
For you. It is the only way I can get them through the German line. I used to bring you fish every day before they come. Now I bring you fish today. Just like old times.
Humorous though individual incidents were, the laughter was underlined with tears. The food situation rapidly grew appalling. From time to time, though, we were able to get some help for the children and the aged and sick through the Red Cross. The Greeks were magnificent throughout. Toward the end of June, the Italians poured into the city, further confusing the issue of who were the masters of Greece, the Italian fascists or the Nazis. We were ordered to restrict our movements within narrow limits. The noose was drawing tighter. Experience in settling British problems had taught us what to expect if we were caught without hope of escape. If war came, our non-official colony could starve behind German barbed wire. Yes, cut off from communications, the thread of life in this little microcosm of America grew very frail. It was with this knowledge that we continued to work with the German representative, Dr. Vogel. One day, he called me in and called my attention to certain papers which he said he wished to communicate to me informally.
You will be interested to know, Herr Jones, that the limitations on movements of diplomats have been relaxed.
Really, Dr. Vogel?
This will be brought to the attention of your minister officially. But I thought that you and the staff there might like to take trips this Sunday, if you so desire.
That's very kind of you, Dr. Vogel. But in view of the situation, we're not in holiday mood these days.
No?
And Dr. Vogel, are there any messages for us? We've sent a number of telegrams through you, but haven't received a single reply.
No messages.
I see. And, do you happen to have any news, Dr. Vogel?
Yes, it so happens. I have heard that your government has taken the unwise step of closing the consulates and travel agencies of the Third Reich in the United States.
Oh, yes. Would you mind a blunt question, Dr. Vogel?
I welcome it.
Are you going to throw us out in retaliation?
I have no instructions from Berlin as yet.
Strangely enough, if we must go, it's of great importance to us to know exactly which conqueror is throwing us out.
Indeed?
If by your government, I suppose it would be by airplane?
Yes, I suppose so.
Mm-hmm. In which case, we would lose everything, all of our property and belongings. On the other hand, if the Italians should throw us out, they might be persuaded to send a boat to take us to Italy.
You realize, Herr Jones, that taking an Italian boat is not without risk?
I think a number of us would prefer to take that risk.
Well, if my government requests you to leave, certain arrangements might be made to take care of your more valuable possessions. It depends on how your government treats the Germans it is expelling from the United States.
That's interesting.
In any case, I will inquire about this matter from Berlin. I will let you know.
Days passed. No word from Vogel. Problems were pouring in from individuals.
I must get out. I'm ill. The American legation must help me.
My company insists that I return home. You must get me out.
I must get back to the university.
I've got to ship my valuables.
I don't want to die in Greece. I want to go home.
We managed as best we could to create some order out of the chaos. All the men in the American colony belonged to the Propeller Club, which was the center of plans to help Greek friends and war victims, and of various emergency plans to become operative in case of internment, if and when America came into the war. It gradually occurred to all of us that perhaps we should be dealing with the Italians rather than Dr. Vogel. The Italians seemed to be taking over the city. So we decided to put the direct questions to see where we stood. Dr. Vogel, may I ask whether Athens is officially occupied by Italian troops at the moment?
Just at the moment, Herr Jones, neither the Italians nor the Germans are officially occupying Athens.
You will admit, Dr. Vogel, that a point will soon occur when the Italians will be in control. Now, we don't want to offend the Italian authorities by continuing to come to you as representative of the German government.
That thought has never occurred to me. As far as I am aware, the question of the Italians taking over the duties of the Greek Foreign Office assumed by the German government has never arisen. I do not think it will arise. In any case, it will be satisfactory to continue to deal with me.
Then, how about our American colonies? They're anxious to leave, and you have done nothing about it.
That question is receiving attention in Berlin. I have nothing else to tell you, Herr Jones.
Then we're virtual prisoners?
Germany is only following the United States in restrictive measures. We do not take a step against your government until you take a step against us. You threw out our consuls in America, and we do not yet know what you will do to our nationals.
If we of the American colony in Greece are not prisoners, perhaps the word should be hostages.
Oh, that is a strong word. I can easily defend the German position. These are war times, for us, anyway. And there is, Herr Jones, you see, another difficulty, a lack of transport. We must consult Berlin.
But the situation is urgent, Dr. Vogel. The colony is small, and many of them are old, some sick. Surely their transport would constitute no very serious problem.
So?
They've been shut off from communications with the United States for so long. That's hard on the very old and ill.
I must act on orders from Berlin.
But you are the representative of Berlin. It would be a great encouragement if you could permit even a few to leave on a regular weekly basis.
I will consider for immediate departure exceptional cases.
Well, what would you consider exceptional cases? I would suggest that elderly persons and small children might receive preferential treatment.
Berlin would not understand why you want to get out such a group. No, Herr Jones. By exceptional cases, I mean persons having pressing business affairs or some urgent reason for travel.
Unsatisfactory though our dealings were with Dr. Vogel, we could finally get results by simply being firm and insistent. We were eventually able to evacuate the unofficial members of the American colonies in an orderly manner, person by person. To this day, we can scarcely conceive our good fortune. We were able actually to make arrangements to get out in the early summer and to place our legation as well as British interests in the hands of the Swiss legation.
Well, I believe that is all, Mr. Weisdorf.
We should take good care of American interests and property, Mr. Minister.
This scene has an air of having occurred before. It seems only yesterday that the British were handing over their affairs to us.
Do you think your government will go to war with Germany?
I only hope, quite selfishly, that the Swiss government can stay out of it. You know, this is like home to us. We'd like to feel that there is someone here taking care of it while we go away, shall we say, for a little vacation.
There were codes to destroy, confidential papers to burn, property to store. Final miscellaneous business such as trying to salvage coal and gasoline for the Greeks. And the painful job of thanking our Greek staff for services, some of them of 20 and 30 years' duration. These goodbyes were especially difficult. Would we come back? Would they be waiting for us? What did the future hold? We realized that our bit of America in Greece was dying out in the night that had swept over Europe. And the same unhappy situation prevailed in the American Foreign Service establishments at Belgrade, Helsinki, Sofia, in Warsaw, all over the continent. We were the last lights in Europe to go out. And not only Americans, but all friends of freedom and justice felt the darkness even blacker after we'd left. Some of the former legation in Greece returned to America. Some were sent to other posts, and some joined the Greek government in exile at Cairo, where they remained until one day in October 1944.
Why do I hear such whisperings about Friday the 13th, Simpson?
You mustn't even think that, Faith, my dear.
Oh?
Oh, no, I suppose it can be told now. For on that day, Allied forces sailed from Alexandria to liberate Greece.
Back to Greece? On that unlucky day?
Do you remember the day the Greeks considered unlucky?
Indeed. I believe it was Tuesday. Always thought that was most peculiar.
Then you will think it strange indeed that the Greek government had chosen Tuesday next to follow the liberation into Athens. And we go with them. We mean to take the curse off both those unlucky days, my dear. Pray God we will.
Sailing into the harbor of Piraeus, the Isle of Greece, the wine-dark sea, violet-crowned Hymettus, and the Acropolis were even more beautiful than we had remembered. But there was little time to be moved by the beauty, because two of our boats struck German mines, and a destroyer was lost. The port of Piraeus was a shambles, and miles of seashore near the city also had been ruined. Otherwise, Athens and its environs were intact physically. The city was shabby, as many others were in the world by 1944. But the most striking innovation was the stupendous amount of paint which had been and was still being used, not to improve appearances, but to deface buildings and monuments, walls and sidewalks, with slogans of various kinds. Perhaps the second most extraordinary feature of Athens in October 1944 was the fantastic currency inflation.
But, Vincent, we can't even buy an aid. What does an aid cost? Millions of Greek drachmas? Why, that's ridiculous.
We couldn't buy anything. We lived on British rations at first, and we were very grateful for them. We tore off the Swiss seals on our buildings and moved in. And best of all, we found all but two of our staff waiting for us.
3 long years, and now you're back.
You look just the same.
A little thinner, perhaps, and the same clothes.
But we're all back again, aren't we? That's the important thing.
And it seems like old times.
It was at first something like old times as we had left it. Before long, there was a rash of civil war that sent the machine gun bullets flying into our very room. But this eventually quieted down, and we resumed the normal business of the embassy. There were new claims to be attended to, and old ones also.
I'm a veteran of World War I. Now, do I keep getting payments from the Veterans Administration?
Does my citizenship status make me eligible for a loan?
I'm starving. I need food.
I can't pay $1.40 a pound for potatoes. What am I to eat?
Can you get me a passage to New York? Maybe you know my brother. He was a great friend of Teddy Roosevelt.
By the end of January, things were almost normal.
Louis, come to the window.
Huh?
Why, it's Nicholas.
Our old friend, the fish man.
And no coffin this time.
No lobsters either, I expect. But whatever he does have, he can bring us freely and openly, and without fear.
Yes.
Go let him in, Louis. Now the world's right again.
You have been listening to Tales of the Foreign Service, a feature of the NBC University of the Air, written and produced in cooperation with the State Department and based on confidential State Department files.